The Iranian government admits 11 protesters were killed on June 20th. But doctors from 3 Tehran hospitals confirmed at least 34. Other bodies were buried by security forces before they could be identified. Neda was buried without ceremony. When they tried to hold a memorial, Neda's sister told us that the authorities prevented them.
We were not allowed to hold a wake in her memory. We weren't allowed to put up a notice on a local board to announce her death. None of the mosques would take us. None of the halls or restaurants would give us a place to hold a ceremony in Neda's memory. They wouldn't let us.
Neda's boyfriend, Caspian Makan, was distraught and angry. He decided to speak out to satellite TV stations overseas.
How
did you find out about the death of Neda?
My phone rang, and the screen said, Neda. I was expecting to hear her voice, but it was her sister saying she left us. She was targeted deliberately, even though you can clearly see she didn't have a stone in her hand. I don't know what the Iranian authorities have to say about this. Do they have anything to say about this?
Not long after, Caspian called his friend Delbar.
I saw his number and answered it. He sounded very hushed. It was obvious he had his hand next to the speaker so the others wouldn't hear. He told me in a whisper, "They are by my house. They have come to get me."
Caspian was taken to Evin prison, although the authorities didn't confirm his arrest for 6 weeks.
I have not heard what precisely they have stated as the reason for his arrest. But from what I have read myself in the news, they are accusing him of somehow being involved in the murder. And this is just not the case.
The regime tried to repair the damage done to its reputation and contain the sympathy for Neda and the protesters.
About this woman who was killed, and Obama who sheds crocodile tears for her, and the West makes a star out of her. Any wise person who sees this film would understand this was done by rioters and protesters.
Fars News blamed a BBC correspondent, saying he'd staged the death for a documentary. Then they said Neda was still alive and living in Greece.
In this report, we are trying to study Neda Agda Sultan's death from a different angle.
In this state television documentary, witnesses were identified and marched back to the scene of the murder. Here, Neda's music teacher was made to conform his story to the official version. It was now up to the other key witness who had seen the Basiji at the scene to speak.
Every life and moment comes that the integrity of some person would be tested. And I realized on that day that this was the moment in my life that I had to choose whether to keep myself safe or prove my integrity.
Pictures of the death of Neda Sultan have appalled people around the world. The man who tried to save her has been talking about what happened.
Dr. Hejazi flew to the UK and went public.
Her blood was draining out of her body, and I was just putting pressure on the wounds to try to stop the bleeding.
He remains the key eyewitness on the record, for which he's paid a high price.
I cannot go back to Iran. I know I had received threats here, even here, anonymous threats, which concern me a little bit about my personal security and safety. And that's just because I talked. I never knew. I've worked in literature all my life, and I always talked about and preached about the power of words. But I never realized how powerful words can be.
Since the summer, Iran's authorities have restored an appearance of normality with the strictest controls. Through the fall, they televised show trials where reformist supporters were made to recant.
من و افرادی که مثل من که به جناب عالی رأی داده بودیم با این اعتماد که به شما داشتیم به خیابان‌ها ریختیم. نظم و امنیت عمومی رو مختل کردیم. باعث رنجش خاطر رهبر عزیزمون شدیم.
Then in October, the regime tried to script the end of Neda's story. But instead, Neda's mother made a very public stand. The government offered her financial help if she would blame Neda's death on opponents of the regime. All she had to do was to agree to call Neda a martyr for the Islamic Republic. But she refused.
Neda died for her country, not so I could get a monthly income from the Martyr Foundation. If these officials say Neda was a martyr, why do they keep wiping off the word martyr, which people write in red on her gravestone?
Like others in this film, Delbar Tavakoli now lives in exile. She landed in Turkey, the place where Neda and boyfriend Caspian Makan had met for the first time.
That was where they had gotten emotionally involved. But less than a year on, with all the dreams they'd had, one of them is dead, another is in prison, and I'm here for my part in trying to get the real story out.
Neda loved traveling, and she traveled a lot, as much as she could anyway. But most of all, she loved Turkey. She loved Istanbul, and she wanted to leave there at some point. Neda always said she would leave Iran if she had only one day left of her life.
Caspian was kept in Evin prison for 65 days, then put under house arrest through the fall, until just recently, when he escaped and fled over the Turkish border. He spoke to us from hiding.
When I was leaving, I was taking in everything in Tehran. It was full of people who were so weighed down. It was hard to leave the place where I have lived all my life. I am 38 years old. I love Iran. I always will love Iran. It was worse because I was about to leave Neda's resting place. I couldn't accept Neda's death. I can't accept it now. I'm waiting until I see her again.
And now, a Frontline World Special Report. In an era of global fears about pandemics like HIV and H1N1, we go to the hot zone in Uganda and bring you a story of dangerous viruses that can jump back and forth between humans and the great apes.